there's a motion to adopt that.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Finance meeting minutes are adopted. Moving into today's,
Hold on, I got the wrong thing, so I apologize.
Never.
Oh, something is wrong with my phone. Can we go based on the agenda? I apologize.
we can,
We can move.
we can do this old school. So, Mayor Maddox and Ms. Michaels, y'all are up on item number 1, the new business water and sewer capital budget overview.
Yes, sir. Mr. Busby, as you requested, you asked us to, in advance of the August 19th budget submittal, to go ahead and begin putting out portions of the budget for the council to begin considering. So today, we're going to start with water and sewer capital and water and sewer operations. As you recall, when we presented our capital budget back on August 19th, we said that we wanted to wait following getting through the bond issues to present the water sewer capital. The reason being is in 2021, and I believe it was effective in fiscal year 2022, the city council authorized a 6% rate increase for capital projects, with funding going towards two things. One, obviously capital projects that are needed within the water and sewer system. And the second was the funding of the water and sewer plan, a $300 million presentation over 10 years. And we have begun working that plan into fruition thanks to your leadership. So we wanted to get through the bond issues, or get substantially through, so we would have a more exact recommendation for you on the capital side. So today we are recommending $7 million in capital projects that comes from that 6% that you authorized back in fiscal 21. And you will see a little bit later as we discuss operating the benefits of your leadership of taking on the water and sewer operating budget, which has significantly helped our ability to do capital projects. So the projects that you see, that a sheet has been handed out with 7 projects listed. This is in addition to what's into our 10-year water and sewer plan. So this would be in addition to what's been authorized. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Kimberly Michael to quickly walk you through these projects that make up the $7 million in recommendations. So Kimberly?
Kimberly, do we have a handout of the 7?
Yes, sir. This sheet looks like this.
I've got the sheet.
That's
It's 6 projects,
Yeah.
$7 million.
This is
I'm
it.
sorry,
Yeah.
6 projects.
So we were just giving just a brief overview of the project, so, yeah. So the first project is what we're calling the Mercedes Force Main Lift Stations. And so we did the study for Lift Station 42 that we talked about off and on throughout a couple of years. And when we were doing that, we decided it'd be best to move all the way up from where the waste is coming from. So that would start at Mercedes, and it goes to Lift Station 39, 40, 41, 15, and then 42. So we've studied all of those stations for an overall holistic approach for how that wastewater gets into the treatment system. So with doing that, we came up with recommendations that are needed to rehab Lift Station 39, 40, 41, and 15. And so, so this would be to engineer the rehab of those stations. So that's what the first 1.2 million is for.
This is to engineer it
Yes, sir.
or to do it?
To engineer there's 4 lift stations there that would need work.
Okay, so this is just the study and drawing of what would need to be done.
Just that would be to get ready for full bid phase, to get ready to bid.
If you recall, the Mercedes line is a complicated project, number one, because of the length and geography, but number two, because of the lack of flows that exist within the line, because it really just serves Mercedes as part of the overall Project Rosewood agreement from the early 90s. So it's complicated and has to be done in a way to meet those challenges that I just outlined.
we don't have an engineer for this yet, so the 1.2 is our estimate on what it would cost for that. So we would have, this would go out for an RFP or an RQ, seek qualified engineers and then select one based on that.
Any questions?
The next project is the Water Resource Recovery Facility Phase 3 improvements. And so this particular phase of this would include upgrades to the aeration basin, the aeration basin blower system, and then the return activated sludge system, which we call the RAS. So these are very old systems that we have, as we've been going through the processes of starting at the beginning of the plant, we're now at this next phase. If you recall, right now, we're working on the aeration basin itself, so that's the concrete basins that are out there. So we're working on all the components, the equipment that's inside of those basins. And so this next phase would be the RAS system and then the blowers that feed into the basins. You wanna know what RAS is?
No, I know what RAS is.
Do you know what RAS is?
I've been out there.
Okay.
Again, and I'm hesitant to ask, again, is this doing the work or just figuring out what needs to be
Yeah,
done?
this is engineering and construction on
This
these
is
big parts of
doing
it.
All right,
All right, the next one is for Hillcrest tank rehabilitation. So it's like your traditional tank painting project that we've done, but this one also has an extra piece because in order to take Hillcrest tank offline, we have to do some work at the Taylorville and the McFarland booster pump stations. So we have to add VFDs so that we can basically simulate like the tank is still online. So this one's a little bit more because it has a little bit extra work that has to happen at the booster pump stations. But so that one is 1.2.
all right,
The next one is the remainder of the outfall line that's on the plant grounds at the Fletcher facility. So this is the line that leaves the plant and heads out to the river. So this is the portion of the line that goes from the plant to the end of our property. It's about 300 additional feet of that. And so the reason this cost, I know 300 feet seems minimal, but we have to completely bypass pump around it because we can't stop pumping. We can't stop using that line. We have to basically create a temporary line so that we can repair the main line or the existing line.
so when you create the temporary line, does it not become feasible to just make the temporary line become the permanent line?
The temporary line will be above ground. It has larger pumps and stuff to help pump it because it isn't at the appropriate elevations. So when you do the construction.
Purely rubber bands and paper for that.
That's right.
Alright.
Probably some duct tape too, but yeah, it's good.
Can't do any engineering about that.
All right, the next one is for the airport runway expansion. This is a sewer betterment. So there will be water and sewer work that happens within the airport expansion, but this is a betterment because we are putting a sewer encasement under the runway because we're not ready for the sewer line yet. And so the water and sewer that is in conflict with the runway will be covered as part of the grant. But this particular betterment we're doing for future expansion of the sewer system out there, which is $400,000. So this portion of it's not covered by the grant because it is considered a betterment.
And at this point, I really am being serious, not funny, but what's the difference between a betterment and an improvement? What's a betterment?
There's not an existing line in this area, and before they get the runway down, we want to go ahead and put a casing in so that when we're ready to expand the system, we don't have to interrupt the runway at all.
You're gonna dig up the runway.
Yeah. So the runway stays, the airport's fully operational, we can feed a sewer line underneath it when we're ready to expand the whole system, and there's zero disruptions to the airport.
But the FAA would not cover that portion underneath the grant because it's a betterment. It's beyond the scope of the grant.
Okay.
It's not an existing
okay.
utility that's currently in conflict.
All right. Any questions on the sewer betterment as part of the runway thing? All right,
The last one is line A, raw water main repair. So this is a 36-inch steel line, and it's the raw water main that comes from Lake Tuscaloosa, and it's a component of it, so it's not disrupting our raw water system. But we have some areas that need repair on that line. We will engineer it in-house, and then just due to the nature of where it is, the size of the line, then we will hire a contractor to do the physical work.
all right. Any questions from the committee members? Comments? So this $7 million is our 6% increase on water and sewer.
Correct. And let Ms. Standards walk you through the capital fund, how it's funded, and then how this $7 million relates to that.
And I did want to point out one more thing, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Sorry, let me ask that, sorry, I messed that up. So on the engineering piece of the first project, which was talk about the force main lift station, the part of the construction piece of that is in the bond.
Okay.
So I probably should have said that.
Well, that, before let Ms. Standards start, what I want to ask you, you got told, all right, you got $7 million. How did you select which projects to use that $7 million?
It's based on priority needs and the things that were coming up and just knowing the cost of some of these other pieces and then how the timing lines up with the bond projects. And so we were trying to do one, like this 7 million, most of these are gonna have, with the exception of the first item, the other ones will have shorter engineering timeframes or ones that we can do more immediate, and they're more immediate needs that we didn't necessarily wanna put in a large bond that are, you know, a lot of the bond projects are $12 million projects, and these were smaller type projects that we felt are more appropriate for an RFFI, a capital fund transfer, that type of a project.
One question very quickly. I just want to make sure the way I read this should help 42.
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Tony.
Good afternoon. I think that, to start with, I really want to go back to, fiscal year 2021, when we were discussing the budget for that year. During the budget discussion for fiscal 21, we proposed the water and sewer 10-year plan. Within the water and sewer 10-year plan, there were, revenue creation caveats. There was a 5-year, adoption of a rate structure that included two things. It included a 6% baseline increase that would go only towards 10-year capital plan projects. On top of the 6%, there was also going to be a CPI rate increase within that same exact 5 years. That CPI increase was to go towards operating cost increases. So when we look at the total overall rate increases, that 6%, the baseline 6%, is only for a 10-year capital plan. So therefore, whenever we are doing our revenue analysis for each year, whatever we project that 6% to be, we will also project to remove it from revenue inflow and set it aside in an escrow account. Now, as we go throughout the year, we will do interim analyses to make sure that we are still on track for all of that and that we're not taking out more than whatever the real 6% created or less. We will actually take the actual 6% increase from year to year and set it over into what we call the 10-year water and sewer plan escrow amount. Within that, we will also pull out the debt service amounts that we have already incurred for the 10-year water and sewer plan, the debt issuances that we've done. Those include the 2022 B issuance. You'll remember we did that for about $35 million. And then we did the 2022 SRF issuances. Mr. Garrison is actually here today to talk about the 2025 B that we'll also do, that will come out of this specific fund as well. But all that to be said, the 6% of the rate increase, the revenue growth from that 6% gets set aside for this plan. The debt service comes out of that. And then what is left over is a piece of that is the $7 million that Kimberly is able to create her proposal from. Now, I will say that the save up is more than $7 million currently, and every year it trended a little bit less than our projection last year because our revenues were a little bit slower to grow. But in 2025, we're a little bit ahead of schedule with that. So it really kind of depends on what the revenue trends are looking like as to what's going into this fund. But as of the end of 2024, we had about $9.5 million in that escrow cash. We decided to use that escrow cash to be able to front pay some of the expenses of the $75 million that we're about to take out today in our bond issuance. so that water and sewer could go ahead and move forward with those large projects. And they weren't gonna be hamstrung and held up by our need to do the process work for debt issuance. Now that we have the bond issuance that we're about to close on, we will reimburse ourselves that about $8 million. And that is what really kind of what this proposal is built off of. So to recap, we have a rate structure in place that includes a 6% increase every year. That 6% rate increase, compounded on itself, is withheld every year and set aside to be able to pay for 10-year plan expenses. That amount will then also pay for debt service, and then whatever amount is left over is kind of what we're looking at as possible new capital projects that we can propose. That is what this proposal is coming from.
And I would encourage the council, as you go through your budget hearings in August and September, to dedicate at least an hour or so to go through the 10-year budget projection and plan on this so you can see. It's also going to be helpful because next year, we as a council will have to discuss the next 5-year rate structure. And so seeing that certainly should play into our calculus of how we want to determine the next 5-year rate structure for the city's Tuscaloosa's water and sewer division department.
So we had built this up to around 9-ish.
About 9.5 at the end of last
You
fiscal
said
year.
we decided to take out the cost of essentially doing the bond issue.
No, sir, no. So if
I
you'll
thought you said of raising the debt.
remember back, it was about a year and a half ago, we did a reimbursement resolution with this water and sewer debt, that we would go ahead and start paying design costs, any possible property acquisition costs, so that they could go ahead and start moving. We would then reimburse ourselves from the bond when we did take it out. That cash that we used was the cash that was in this escrow account. And so it's not paying for expenses, but it is cash outflow to prepay. And then we will actually book the expenses as due on the bond issuance, not out of this escrow account. So that this escrow account will become completely whole again once we do our reimbursement from the bond.
You'll reimburse it
So,
through the bond.
Yes.
so our water and sewer revenues are in the mid-80s.
86 million this year, I think.
So since 6% of 86 is probably somewhere just under 5. All of that is what explains why there is 7 available to utilize after 6% increases. Check.
Well, it was a 6% increase from,
Debt service payments, compounding of that money sitting there, prepaying. That's how we got to 7 from 6%, 6%.
It's doing what we designed it to do when the first year of implementation was fiscal 22 or fiscal 21.
it was 22 was the original year.
So it's doing what it was designed to do. So those are the projects we would recommend. We would certainly like this, if it could, be scheduled earlier, just because we're ready, to rock and roll. We would like it in your schedule, if you could, your hearing schedule, to review it quicker. And again, I think it would be worth your while to see the 10-year spreadsheet, to see what we anticipate the growth of that fund to be, because that should help us influence our discussions on rate structure for the next 5 years.
Okay. Committee members, do you have any thoughts on putting it up for a vote soon?
It's pretty self-explanatory, Mr. Chairman.
I agree.
So, Vicki, you can put it on that. Any non-members have any thoughts on that? No, put it on next week, Carl, for a vote.
Can I ask you a question just for me? I
You're
mean,
further
this
explain it.
back page, that we're talking about just the summary, the water sewer summary,
Yes, sir.
that's only through what month, June? There was a 2025 actual.
Yeah.
Is that probably accurate?
Probably.
2 weeks ago, maybe?
2 weeks? when we're looking at the, I'm skipping around on
We're
you.
probably, we're about to go through that in the next section.
Okay.
Yeah.
But just one quick question. When we're going through this, is depreciation in these expenses, will you remind me?
Depreciation is in the budgeted amount, it's not in the expenses,
It's
yeah,
not in
because
the
we book depreciation at the end of the.
At the end, so if I look at this and say, this deficit in a couple of these other years, is that including?
So these, are you talking about on this?
Yeah, like right here,
this
like where
measure?
it says our deficit, because I know we've made that, like where it's,
That includes the full depreciation
and
amount.
that's how much, roughly a year?
It's about 11.5 million.
Okay.
We raised it this year $2 million.
So from a cash flow basis, we're doing pretty good.
Oh, yes, sir.
You add that back.
I think that last year's net income so fiscal 2024's net income for water and sewer fund was probably about $30 million.
And of that 6%'s in that too, right, in that 30?
Yes, sir.
And then,
Yeah, so if you think about $30 million net income, you've got, I mean, if you wanna talk about it versus a budget, you're kind of looking at, you've got the 11 million in depreciation and you've got about 18 million in a set aside for the escrow. You're kind of, there are a lot more nuances in it than that, but if you wanna talk about the big players.
Then
Yeah,
the
that's good.
assignment for overhead was 9 million.
Last year, I think it was 8 point something, it was maybe 8.6 million. This year, we're about 9.5 million.
Any other questions on this presentation before we go to operating?
good.
Okay, Mayor and Ms. Michaels, you back up for the
And
operating budget overview.
And of course, we'll be calling on Ms. Standridge as well. So kind of as a quick overview, this is my 20th budget to the city council, which is hard for me to believe. And every year in the budget presentation, I always do a comparison of my first budget to the city council, where that guy to the right of me was budget chair, and Mr. Tyner and I were working together way back then to kind of give a comparison of how this budget today stacks against my first budget.
We haven't aged at all.
Not at all. So in my first budget in 2007 that I presented to the city council, 27% were salaries and benefits. The budget that I'm presenting to you is 21% today. The debt service in 2007 was 30%. By the way, the year before was 32%. My last year on the city council. This year it's 16% of budget. So something we should be really proud of. And then you see utilities and telephone and auto fuel. But that gives you a sense of the markers that lay in line that we look at when presenting the budget. I can't say enough, and I will again do this on the 19th, but I can't say enough about Ms. Standridge, Ms. Hornsby, and Mr. Jenkins. They lead our budget team. They do a fantastic job. They really do. We look at 5 pages. They're looking at thousands of pages. And they do a terrific job. And I can't say enough about Kimberly and her leadership. 2 things have happened over the last 5 years to put the water and sewer department in such a good position. One is the leadership of you around this table, and I'm not just saying that. We went years without making some very tough decisions in water and sewer, for better or for worse. This council tackled it, and it's paying off, and you are to be commended to it. The second is Kimberly and her leadership over the last 3 years. And I wouldn't say it if I didn't mean it. And I think those 2 things have really made a difference. So if you go to the second page, this gets to what Mr. Crow was talking about. The water and sewer fund is an enterprise fund. It always has a budgeted deficit. It's been that way. I've been with the city now 25 years. It was that way before my time. That's because of it being an enterprise fund. But as Mr. Crow alluded to, and I don't want to get Carly back for an accounting and auditing, and dear God, I don't know if I can stand it, but how the depreciation factors in to the equation. The thing I would say though that I'm very pleased with, if you looked at this year's proposed deficit at $895, it is much smaller than the budgets recommended or adopted by this council. So again, it gets to the really good, what Ms. Andrews was talking about, the net position, where we are within our water and sewer department.
Can you hold up a second? I
Yeah.
do not have a copy of the operating.
Is this document?
Oh,
Yeah, he was on the second page.
anybody, thought this was yours.
Yeah, mine. You should have done right. Follow along with Mr. John.
All right, next again.
Yeah, you good. I'll follow after John.
Please,
Does everybody have a copy?
Well, I'm good. I can look at
Here's another one. Cash said yours.
We can share.
Okay, I have one now.
You know, now social media is gonna be alive and I'm trying to hide the numbers.
Well, the camera-
Sorry,
But you are along.
And we'll pull the fire alarm in just a couple of minutes, since that obviously didn't work. But if you look at the budgeted deficits, I'm cracking my own self up now. If you look at the budget deficits, you see that we've been able to put ourselves in a really good position. So if you go to the next page, this is the tell of the tape for this fiscal '26 budget. We're recommending to you a budget of $86 million in terms of revenues, $86,057,113. In terms of expenses, $86,952,439. We serve 62,000 water customers and roughly 50,000 sewer customers. So we're a pretty large utility. And as you always hear me say, and I've said in 20 budgets, most city councils don't have to take on this responsibility. In most cases, they're water boards or they have, maybe the water side but don't have the sewer, et cetera. So you take on that full responsibility. So when you look at the revenues that are within this budget, the majority of that comes under charges for services. So if you're looking at the table in the handout that's provided, and you have revenue category, you see use of property, which is the minimum amount of $34,000. The charges for services are the largest amount. So within that charges for services, the largest pots within that is $47.6 million we anticipate or budgeting for water sales and $35.6 million in sewer sales. This makes the assumption of a 3% per the council ordinance, 3% COLA, and a 6% for the capital. As Ms. Standard says, that 6% for capital is taken out and moved into the 10-year water and sewer capital fund. Any questions on the revenue side? The overall revenue increase is a projected 21%. So we're projecting a really good year. It is almost diametrically opposite of what we project in the general fund side. So water and sewer is a much
Can I ask
happier
a dumb
place.
question?
Yeah.
21, what is the basis for that projection? I mean, when we're looking at this, why do we, because I know how we budget very conservatively. So Carly, why do you think that's a good number?
This year, the water and sewer revenues grew exponentially more than we determined. And I would say that, echoing Mayor Maddox's point, a lot of that is due to the leadership of Mr. Michael and the work that they've done on identifying missed accounts, on identifying low charged amounts, on misread meters, on misunderstood rating structures that were applied to the wrong meter size. It really kind of spans the gamut of issues that have been found in the last about 2 years that really have come to fruition in the last 6 months. The amount of revenue growth that we have seen over and above the rate growth from last year in the last 6 months is really exponential.
That's really nice.
That's good to
Thank
hear.
you, Ms. Michael.
Ms.
That's-
Michael, yeah.
That's impressive.
And I would think,
Sense.
AMI also has a role in this as
Yeah.
well. Ms. Michael, if you'll come up too and share your thoughts. She
So
doesn't,
we
she
know-
deserves so much credit.
We know 6% rate increase, right?
Yeah, I can take credit for that too, though.
Hey, you're learning. You're learning. Good job.
You're in keep up, we're both learning. So what I wanted, and we talked about AMI, we talked about tuning the system, but in terms of unit sales volume, are you able to identify what differences we have?
So, yes and no.
Not dollar sales volume, unit sales volume.
Yes. So one of the first pieces I want to talk about is the AMI project. So I do want to stress that the AMI project is not capturing revenue that we didn't have before. That's inaccurate. What the AMI project has allowed us to do is go through every account one by one. And so we're, not only are we replacing damaged meters that weren't getting readings on them, but we're also correcting service codes. So we have several customers that, they live in the city limits and they are on sewer and weren't being charged sewer. Or they live in the county and weren't being charged the 25% surcharge that gets charged to county residents. So there's things like that that have really helped. There's also things where, we had meters that weren't reading correctly, so we had batteries that were dead on some of the old radio read meters that we've now put back so that we're manually reading them, and so we're capturing those readings that were always on the meter, but we just weren't reading them. So we're capturing readings that we've never captured before. So that's really the main reason for the revenue increases. It has to do with that we're actually reading our meters. We're, meters that were damaged, we've replaced. We've changed the way that we're reading so that we can actually go to each meter in a timely manner like we should be doing when we weren't, we bill now the 1st and the 15th, where before it was we close the cycle, then we start the next cycle, and sometimes you may have 38 days in your cycle, sometimes you might have 25 days in your cycle. So we've gotten to where we're actually billing appropriately on every month. Customers are getting bills every month. And then there is the piece of AMI that where we, so now on some of these meters, we can see immediately if a customer has a leak. And so before, it would be the next month or 2 months later before a customer realized they had a leak, they get it fixed, they file for leak relief. Well, that volume that they're filing for leak relief now is way greater than what it is now because we can see it the day it's happening with AMI. So we're not having to write off water that's actually being used and produced. We've also, we've done a water model of our distribution system, and so we were finding areas that weren't adding up right as to where water was going. And so we were able to find a very large leak that was affecting your area of town, Councilor Fell, where we couldn't figure out why water pressures were so low in the area.
And I remember that one
Yes.
very well.
And it was to the tune of about 1 million gallons a day. And so that's water that we're no longer treating and not collecting money for. It was in the bottom of this pond kind of area that if you really go back and look at old photos, you realize that pond that we've always known was there hasn't always been there. So,
But Kimberly, there's no indication of any significant shift in unit volume sales growth, either due to climate conditions or population changes or anything like that. What is there?
when you compare water produced, treated water produced to treated water produced now, there are no substantial differences in that.
Okay.
Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yes. So our overall volumes aren't going up by any substantial amount.
That's what,
Yes.
and same with sewer treatment?
Yes, that's correct. Now, I mean, we do have the heavier rains that we see during rainfall events that are heavier than they used to be years before, but not as far as your regular, normal dry weather conditions.
And that's kind of where I guess, and she's getting very technical with it, but the idea of where the revenue growth is coming from is from their administrative cleanup and understanding of their distribution system within the metering areas that has really created the revenue growth. It's not necessarily there's a new customer on board, or that there's revenue, or there's customer growth in a certain area of town. It's really just due to their cleanup efforts and an understanding of where the system weaknesses were.
It's unrecognized lost revenue is really what the majority of it is. And I mean, and our meter readers and the way that they've done things has completely been overhauled, and they're doing things way more efficiently as well. And so that's, I can't speak enough for how much they've improved and the changes they've made and how they're really buying into improving this holistically.
Unrecognized lost revenue, that's a great way to put it. It was
And
unrecognized and then we identified it and got it back.
On
That's
that
nice.
water line she's talking about, my telephone quit ringing about people not having any water pressure after they.
And mine quit ringing too.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions or comments from the committee members and non-members? Okay. Item number 3, Ms. Sanders, water and sewer budget revision number 4.
Do you wanna, Mayor, are you done with your
I'm
presentation?
done if he's done.
You wanna move forward? He's only gotten through the revenue portion, he was gonna go through the operating
I was
expense
gonna go
portion.
through the expenditure portion, but if you're ready, Mr. Busby, I'll.
No, I wouldn't miss that for the world.
So Sorry, that's why I sat down, I apologize.
I will, come on, Mr. Andrews, we'll have to work on that. All right, so you'll go to the expenditure side, and I'll be brief because I know we're running late. If you look at the table that's provided, fiscal 26 budget summary, if you look on the far right-hand column, you see increases in accounting and finance and IT. The first increase that you see in accounting and finance is due to bad debt. So I do think that's something for us to keep an eye on. That's, we had a pretty significant increase of 170,000 in bad debt write-off. Don't know if that's a factor of the
We
economy.
normally write off 300-ish,
350.
350.
Our system has been through, just before COVID, we were not in a good place. I had not done a good job of positioning water and sewer, in large part because how it was organized under IPS, which is on me, certainly on me. And then COVID, and we entered that phase of about 2 years where no one really had a bill, or if they did, there was COVID relief money. And so, my question initially to Carly was this a function of that? But we've passed through that COVID stage. So at 10, we haven't done any deep analysis, but our cursory opinion is that I think last year people struggled a little bit more in fiscal 24. And so I think that's what you see here with the bad debt. Certainly there needs to be more study on that, but that's our assumption with the bad debt write-off increase we're having to budget. The second under IT is due to the Munis upgrade. Munis is our software system that we use that does all of the financial customer components of water and sewer and everything else at the city of Tuscaloosa. And under other operating, which is the bottom row, that is, we are recommending a $2 million increase in the depreciation number. Again, this is a reflection of our revenues are strong. We created this, ultimately at the end of the day, although I won't go through the accounting machinations on it, at the end of the day, that increase will find its way into capital projects, which is good for our overall distribution system. The budget that I am recommending includes a 3% cost of living adjustment for our non-public safety employees. It also includes an 8.3% increase in health insurance. Our health insurance rates, we're self-insured, continue to go up. I know that initially we thought it was going to be around 11%, but Ms. Herbert did a really good job of negotiations with Blue Cross Blue Shield. There's also this concern about the increase in pharmaceuticals as it relates to the tariff side of the house. So we do have that. In the end, it's still a net increase for all employees, but that's what we're recommending for our non-public safety employees. Debt service represents about 16% of this total budget. As you saw earlier, it actually is a percentage of budget. It's less. It's also $302,811 less than prior year. The reason why is we had 2 debt services roll off, the 2014B and the 2019B, but we also had an increase in the 2020B series. But the end result is a $302,000 less in the debt service line item.
That number is phenomenal relative to debt service as part of your expenses and enterprise. Really.
We've got a good team from our investment banker to people over here to my left. So on the last page, you see a summary. Since we're up against the clock, it does give you an idea of what we're recommending in the major revenue funds and expenditure funds. And of course, we'll go through this in more detail at the different finance committee hearings, but that is an overview of what I'll be presenting on the 19th.
Thank you, Ms. Sanders. The increasing of the depreciation, is that discretionary?
No, sir, it's
It's
a,
capital, right? I mean,
it's
you're
a,
given a formula to determine, right?
it's based off of the actual assets that we have, under the assets that we own and build less the assets that are in construction in progress, and then based off their useful life, it's no, it's based on actual data, it's not based off of anything.
So what allowed us to boost that by 20%?
So one of the issues is that the budget number that we had for depreciation in prior years was never truly, reflective of the actual depreciation that we would be calculating at the end of the year. We could have increased the budget for depreciation in prior years. You already had, as you can see with that handout, we had about $4.5 million of a deficit within the water and sewer fund. And since depreciation isn't actually considered an expenditure, it is an expense on the back end. You know, we felt to like take into account a majority of depreciation was appropriate. This year, to be able to get to truth in advertising on what depreciation really will be, because we were able to with the revenue growth, that's where we ended up.
In layman's terms, we've never been able to get to that number comfortably. This year, we could get to that number comfortably.
Any other questions or comments? All right, then, Ms. Stanton, you want to take us to water and sewer budget revision number 4?
I do. This water and sewer budget revision is requested by the department to use insurance proceeds that were gained in, so sorry, Kimberly, in wreckage of another vehicle. And so she is needing to use the insurance proceeds to repurchase and replace that vehicle. The total amount of this is, there is $62,000 that is going into a certain one equipment line item, and then $24,060 is going into another equipment line item. This is a total of 2 fleet vehicles to purchase.
In order to keep Ms. Michael humble, we decided to put this on the agenda as well. Give her praise, but at the same time, you know.
Good wrecking cars.
Yeah.
Any questions or comments?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Yes, item is approved. Item number 4, general fund reserve for future improvements, budget revision number 16. Ms. Stanton.
Yes, sir, this has to do with the drainage, the immediate drainage needs that was reviewed in projects committee. This is requesting to move to do 2 project closeouts. One is for Juanita Drive Phase 2, which we had a leftover amount of $382,596. And then the Public Safety Logistics Center that came in way under budget when we did the bid offering. We feel comfortable about moving $500,000 out of that line item and into the neighborhood drainage to be able to do the protective buyouts that was reviewed.
We
Earlier
talked about
today.
that last week, right, Larry?
Yes, yes, sir.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Item is approved. Discussion of Noah's Ark recommendation. Mayor, tell me what you got and want to do there.
Well, I think Mike and I are ready to answer any questions. We weren't quite certain. We just wanted to keep it on the agenda and try to get some feedback from the council exactly in the coming weeks, what in particular you would like us to present to you. And it may be you just want us to go systematically through each project. We would just kind of like to get some guidance.
Well, and I think that, and one of the reason that this is really on the finance committee agenda is going to be the idea of how we're going to finance those, the longer term projects. Like the mayor mentioned, I think in his presentation last week, we'll need to have some kind of financing arm in the earlier term prior to doing the full bond issuance in a couple of years to be able to pay for this. And so really, and I think Mr. Busby, you and I discussed
Well,
this
you
on
and I
Thursday.
discussed Thursday was
Sure, trying to get a little bit of direction from the committee and from the council about how we want to really research this going forward. I think their initial proposal was a line of credit. And we can do that with some of our local banks just to kind of see that we have a relationship with, just kind of see what's out there. In order to do a full line of credit, we will have to do an RFQ process. So, you know, we can do some pre-research if that's what the council wanted to do. I would rather not put our banking, partners on the hook for doing some of that preliminary research if we really don't wanna go the line of credit way, if we'd rather do something else. So really kinda looking for some
What is
direction.
the something else?
If
I
we wanna
mean, the
do,
other option, as I remember it, oversimplifying, was borrow a bunch of money with right now that we don't need, stick it somewhere and spend it as we need it.
That's
Hope
it.
and hope we borrow the right amount.
And and in general, I think we already pre-believe that's not a good option. So we had, the meter had moved over to line of credit, and mine and your conversation on Thursday was, my memory from the last $25 million line of credit is, we're going to be presented with LOC products that are differentiated to make them less easy to compare. And that involves everything from, hey, no cost of putting in the line of credit at all. We do it for you for free, but yeah, you're gonna pay X basis points once you have it, just for having it. And then our rate's gonna be LIBOR plus 1.5. And the next guy's gonna be, well, we're gonna charge you a quarter point to put it in, but you don't pay anything except when you, that's what I'm anticipating us having to sort through. And it may be, if it's possible to determine from our banking partners, without getting too specifics, okay? Not how many basis points that's gonna be, but the general question, how is your line of credit product structured? I would like to know if we're aware of different meaningful structures that we're gonna be looking at. You follow what I'm saying?
Yes, sir, and I think that we can probably gain that from our very close banking partners that we work with.
Yeah, they don't have to pull out their sharp pencil
Right.
yet, but they need to be able to tell us, this is how we structure our LLC.
Do y'all want to go, if I'm following this discussion right, you want the financial aspect in this committee, which makes all the sense. Do you want the discussion of the projects to be put on Mr. Crow's committee?
Yeah.
What is that?
I think that
Projects.
makes more sense.
Okay.
That way we
Okay,
won't,
yeah.
And I want everybody there.
that way we don't combine the two and stuff.
I'd
Okay.
like to do that, like we're talking about next
That
week,
makes-
as soon as we can, to get
And I
direction.
do think those can move parallel.
Absolutely,
Okay.
and maybe next week
Can
in
and
finance. Because again, we're gonna get sidetracked on the 19th.
And Carly, if the answer your staff gets, if they come back and go, nah, they're all the same, okay, we've answered that question and we know what to look for. Now it's just plugging it in.
That's a question.
Yeah, sure.
Carly, I know we use some of those line of credits, is that line of credit regions, or was all that closed?
Oh, yes, yeah,
Did
so,
we close all those?
so the approximately 25 million line of credit that we got during COVID was closed, I think, about 4 years ago. And then the $4 million line of credit that we did for
For
fire
the
station number
fire
6 was only for fire station number
It
6.
was only for that,
Yes, sir.
okay. I remember we had one, but that was over with when we finished.
We will close that one immediately when we
Yeah.
pay that off, yes, sir.
Okay.
I think we need to add to that discussion from your treasury people what our anticipations are in terms of surplus available cash to, in essence, front ourselves.
Okay.
Carly, don't they do some of those on a tax exempt basis as long as it's qualifying expense, just like
They
we do?
will, they will, and when we did when we did fire station number 6, we got a couple of quotes in that vein. Okay,
That's what I would like your staff to begin shaping and preparing us to be able to decide between the time.
Do you have a problem if I know with the initial proposals that were put before the council last week for the short term out of neighborhood drainage, and I can't remember, Walt, was that number 4 to $5 million? Was it 4-ish million?
Well, it's really, you've already approved the additional 3, so what you just approved was an additional 800.
Yeah.
Something.
Oh, yes, sir,
It's
800
between
and-
5 and 6 million.
385, 3.85.
Oh, 882,000, between the two, it's 382 from wanting to drive and then 500,000
So
from.
what we'll do
That'd be
is
at 5.3.
if that gets
Yes,
authorized by
Well,
the.
it wasn't 5.3, it'll be 6.2.
If that gets authorized by city council, we'll begin the negotiations for next week at council, we'll begin the negotiations on the Academy Drive projects, but we would like to get those other neighborhood drainage projects.
Absolutely, but Mr. Chairman, if that comes to projects for discussion next week, is it okay to put that correspondingly on finance next week? Because we could try to get those rolling, the initial phase we were talking about, the other day. We talked about that projects, have it in finance.
You mean for the neighborhood drainage
But
projects?
there's the beginning for that $4 to $5 million, whatever we've had raised.
And what was that funding source?
It was in there, we're gonna.
Just
In the
It's
neighborhood
in there,
drainage.
we're not
Okay, okay,
borrowing
okay,
money for
gotcha.
that, we got money for that.
Okay, gotcha,
So, but
gotcha.
just kind of start that process, start that movement.
And I'll be honest, that, unless you would like for it to come back to finance committee to discuss something specific, we don't necessarily need budget revisions
Okay.
out of that. They can just move forward after, for contract award.
Because you have the money.
Because the money's already set.
Set aside.
To
that
the
we-
agenda?
After today,
Okay.
yeah, after today, it'll go to full council next week, and then it's really ready to.
Okay, yeah, let's not hold that up.
If there's any guidance y'all need to give them for projects on what to start showing from the original food.
For this will be next week. Silently.
Yes.
Y'all are okay with it?
I'm okay, but Mr. Busby, did you ask, were you asking Farley to see what budgets we can look at internally first? For Noah's Ark recommendation?
I think when he's talking about cash, he's more talking about, are there ways to save interest expense
Okay,
for a
okay,
couple
gotcha.
of months, years, before we
Right,
draw on credit.
Before we get the.
So,
before we get the bond.
If we've got money we know sitting there that we're not gonna touch for
That's the problem.
4 years,
Okay,
can we front ourselves that money?
that, yes, okay, gotcha.
I will say this probably that's probably a brag on our treasury team, is that we've done such a good job doing that before, that it's anticipated that we can do it again. We will look to see if we can.
Okay, that's,
But I will say that on the general fund side, it is harder than on the water and sewer side. We can push cash between the two. We try and not, because they should stand alone as much as possible. We can do two fronts and interfund loans between the two. But generally on the general fund side, if it is not within Elevate, it is difficult to front yourself cash. Just general fund has a larger payroll. They have more departments that spend out of it on an ongoing basis. So the cash flow in the general fund is a little bit more tenuous. We'll see what we can do though.
All right, we're not going to have any, unless you have any to bring up, we're over our time already. Are there any other questions or comments or items to be brought before finance committee today? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Give you an update on what happened today?
I do,
Okay.
thank you.
Very quickly.
I've been here a while.
No, it's because rates went down, I'm scared.
Okay. So we had a call, pre-pricing call like we normally do yesterday, and we were successful in selling all of the maturities at what we wanted to. We were actually able to go back later this morning and push down some rates because we had so many buyers.
Yeah.
So that was a good thing. So we ended up at about 4.8%, slightly higher than the $16 million tax exempt bill on July 15th, but we were happy, especially with all going on in the news these days. So worked out to be about 4.8% over 30 years. The payment, I believe, is less than what y'all budgeted. We closed on A and C, by the way, today. So congratulations, that money's been moved over. Let Nick and Terry know that got a big check coming to finish building that. And then y'all will vote on this one, next Tuesday, on the 12th. And then we gave an extra meeting like we always do, just in case forums or something. And then that D series will close on the 26th, And we will be done with those three, and then we'll wait for Tick-Rick for
And remind me the
Nobody's
total
saying
size
it.
could be.
$75 million cash.
Questions? Comments? And I think, Ms. Tanner, I think we saw around 7,000 and change, was it, we shaved off the projected annual.
Actually, it's $7,000 and change from what they projected yesterday to what they were able to sell today. It's about 119,000 less than what I had projected in our 10-year plan. We had updated those projections and it's about $16,000 less than what we budgeted. So all around, in all of our projections, it is better off.
Thank y'all for
Thank
the confidence.
Good job.
And everybody that participated. I thought all three of them were the smoothest that since I've been working with the city for a lot of different reasons.
Okay, any, so a motion to adjourn.
Motion,
For a second.
right, second.
Second, yep.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.